friends. I'm your host, Dr. Dave Laton, and thank you for joining me in our journey to hope. It is my desire through this podcast to bring you information about how to discover, sustain, or perhaps regain hope. In this episode, I'm speaking with a new friend, Ingrid Hanson-Popp. Ingrid is an author, podcaster, and musician. She also has some excellent insights into caregiving. I'm going to let her introduce herself, and we'll talk about her insights into caregiving. Hello, Ingrid.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for having me on today.
Oh, the thrill is mine. I'm serious. I've been looking forward to this. Caregiving is something I'm involved in, have been involved in the past, and am very, very interested in. And I want to hear what you have to say about your experiences and then some insights that you can share with us. So let's get started. Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
All right. Very good. So I grew up in the Midwest. I'm from a Christian family, a great Christian Bible type church. Of course, that doesn't make me a Christian. And I was saved as, I was 7 or 8 years old, grew up on a dairy farm, and I had forgotten one of my chores that I had to do. And it must have been the fall coming into winter because we all were at the supper table and my dad said, well, you need to go out and finish your chores. And it was pitch dark. And so as a little girl, I was frightened. And I thought, I'd heard about Jesus since I was in the womb. And I'm like, well, I could ask Jesus to help me. Wait a minute. I haven't asked Jesus into my heart to be my savior. So the logic kicked in. And so I just in a simple childlike manner asked Jesus to help me and be my savior. And then, so get through the fear. So it was interesting because I was alone. And God worked through logic even in how I was wired as a young girl. But more about how I got to here and the caregiving and my book. So when my mom was about in her, mid-late 70s, I started thinking about, and she was alone again. She was widowed for a second time. I thought, life's going to come to an end for her. Are there dreams of hers that I could help her fulfill? And one of her dreams was to write the story of her life. And somewhere in the gene pool, organization did not come from my mom. She had her own way of sorting things, but I got a lion's share of how do I be organized? And some of it was survival, I think, of growing up in our household. But I thought, well, I could help Mom. She wants to write her story. I could help her write her book. And so we started that process together. It's called Cellophane Farm, like I said, because I grew up on a farm. So it's a memoir of her life and our story of our family. And so when I did the book release on Cellophane Farm, I had to do one in my hometown and the church that she was part of for 60 years, and then where I live now. And I had people coming up to me. They knew that I had helped my mom at the end of her life, and they would come up to me, Dave, with these passionate stories about, Mom just fell and broke her hip. The whole family's in uproar of what to do. Or Dad passed away and now Mom is living alone. We're not sure what to do with her. And I didn't ask. I didn't even bring it up. And I had all these people, dozens of people saying these stories. And what caught my attention was that these were capable, smart, hardworking individuals. And they were completely flummoxed, completely overwhelmed when their parents started aging and not doing well. And so I was paying attention to that and really felt it was God saying, there's a need there. Yeah. Because they needed help and there wasn't anything readily available, which I'll talk about more later. And the title, Becoming an Orphan, came from one of my good friends who was a missionary with Wycliffe. And she's a therapist, a counselor. And she called me from overseas after my mom had passed, a couple, 3 weeks later, and she said, well, how are you doing as being an orphan?
Hmm.
And I had to pause for a second. Then I realized what she meant because my dad had died when I was 15 and now mom was gone and that I was an orphan. And I hadn't thought about it that way, but it was her phrase that became the title of the book, Becoming an Orphan, A Caregiver's Guide to Lovingly Letting Our Parents Go. So
Okay.
that's how I started and how I got to this spot.
Yeah. Well, that is an eye-catching title. Um, yeah, we have this image in our mind of an orphan as a small child, but here you are without your mom and dad. So, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So you began caring for your mom as a caregiver,
Mm-hmm.
and she shared stories and you captured them. So
Mm-hmm.
that, okay, great. So where I want to shift to is share some of your insights as a caregiver. You know, something that my research has shown, and I've lived it in my own case, is that about 60% of caregivers, and I'm talking about the non-paid, the family caregiver, such as yourself, about 60% of them are women. And of the
Mm-hmm.
40% of us that are guys, the overwhelming majority of us have no idea, no concept, and no expectation that we're going to be in that role. And so here we are. And
Mm-hmm.
so my purpose is to help folks kind of understand what caregiving is about. And I mentioned I'm working on a seminar that I'm going to be presenting, and we'll focus on things to expect and
Mm-hmm.
resources and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
your book is a good resource, I think. So,
Yes, it would be.
all right. So share some insights
You
about
bet.
caregiving from your experiences.
You bet. So, and just to paint the picture, so my mom was independent pretty much till the very end. She had her wits about her. There was no memory loss. She was living her own life, organized with, groceries and errands and church activities and friends and driving still. And
Yeah, she'd been an adult the majority of her life. So,
yeah, right. And so one of the things I learned in especially interviewing, so I have my experiences in the book, and then obviously I interviewed about 24 other people with
okay.
varying experiences. And those dealing with Alzheimer's,
Hmm.
those from large families, small families, the ones who needed to activate power of attorney for medical care, which I did not need to. At any rate, so one of the reasons that makes caregiving so overwhelming and challenging is that every single person and every single family system is completely unique.
Hmm.
So, and I'm learning that all over again because my mom and I had a fine relationship. She trusted me. She was open to talking about, here I am talking, she didn't mind talking about her money or her health or her doctor's appointments or her medications. And she was fine with me coming with her to appointments. What I'm learning is that as my husband's parents age, my in-laws are not the same as my mom.
Yeah.
So I'm having to relearn, as a friend said, hey, I know somebody that wrote a book about this. I'm having to relearn because they're different personalities. They're different. It's a different dynamic and so forth. But anyway, everyone's situation is unique. One of the insights I learned with mom was, and it's a big theme of the book, and that is you have to have a team to do this, to do it well, and not lose yourself, as well as not get resentful, or if the care that's involved is very intense, where you may have your parent come live with you, or you need to stay with them, or have somebody stay with them overnight every
Right.
night.
Hmm.
That's pretty intense. That's going to rock your world. And so I should back up. And so what you need to do is, as you see the needs that your parents have, you need to take some time to step back and look at your life situation. That can be, okay, am I married? Is my spouse dealing with health issues? Am I dealing with health issues? Or if you're on the younger side and you still have kids at home that you're trying to
Hmm.
drive to soccer practice, you have to be, or you're single and you have a career, or you live like my friend Valerie, she lived out of country as her parents aged. And that's a whole,
Yeah.
you have to look at your own situation and take realistic stock of what are my limitations, what can I do, what area am I going to need to get help from, and first. And I think as Christians, a lot of times we're afraid to recognize our own limits
Yeah.
because we have it somewhere mixed up in our head and our heart that then I'm not being a good Christian, or I'm not being caring enough, or I'm not sacrificing enough, or it's a tricky balance sometimes. So that's, I guess would be the first thing you want to do is, as the situations, I mean, the deal is that you have one situation come up with a parent and then something will change. So your caregiving is not going to stay the same. It
Uh-huh.
will change and alter. But the second big theme is that you need to create a team. And that can be like one of my friends, he was an only child, and his mom, they discovered, they didn't find out till kind of late, that she had Alzheimer's. And he had his wife and himself, and then a really good friend of his mom's. And Dave decided to have his mom come live with them to live out her days in their home without professional health care. But his wife was 100% on board, and his team was small. That was it. And it worked. And he was very grateful that he had his mom at the end. Another person I interviewed is one of 10 siblings. And so they
Wow.
had yeah, wow. And they had a whole network of people. Some had some medical background. Some lived nearby. Some lived across the country. But what he facilitated was family meetings to make sure everybody was informed. Everybody
Okay.
knew what was
Hmm.
happening. And, when there was a new medical issue that came up with mom, they would have a Zoom call just to make sure everyone, like, say, if they were across country, they would know if it was getting close to the end and they wanted to
Yeah.
come and be with mom.
That's interesting that you mentioned that. That really is important. A lot of people forget about that. A friend of mine does seminars on dealing with grief. And we were talking the other day about anticipatory grief, when you have somebody you're caring for and they're terminal.
Yep.
And one of the points he made is something you just made, is you need to make sure everybody's on the same page. Everybody in the family that's dealing with this, because you
Mm-hmm.
might have somebody who just refuses to accept it or believe that it's really happening, or whatever. So what you just
Mm-hmm.
said is very important. By the way, you said something else. It's a passion of mine to communicate to people, and I want you to get back to some of your own thoughts. I'm sorry, but the idea that nobody walks alone, and tied very closely to that is you got to take care of yourself. And so if
Yes.
you're so involved with the caregiving that you neglect yourself, not letting others help or knowing how to let others help, then you may do some damage to yourself, which then prohibits you from being able, or prevents you from being able to help the other person as much as you might want to. So
Exactly.
that's a very, very important point, and I appreciate you
Yes.
making that point. Okay, some other insights.
Sure. Yeah. And so being aware that, so it kind of goes along with that communication, creating a team, and that is resentment of other family members, siblings generally, can raise its ugly head in a heartbeat.
Sure, sure.
So I'll just tell you that my story is that mom needed to go see her eye specialist, and she asked if I would drive her because I think the office had moved or something. She wasn't quite sure where it was. And
Okay.
so I said, sure, well, we'll figure that out. So I drove her to this, she had macular degeneration, and took her to this eye appointment. Well, after all these numerous tests and waiting for the results and getting more tests, the doctor met with us and he said to my mom, as of right now, you are no longer to drive. There is no option for you to drive anymore. And you have to understand that my mother loved to drive. I think it gave her independence. I think she had a happy memory of her dad teaching her in a Model A to drive. She loved driving. And so the doctor was, I have to give him credit. He was very sensitive. I'm sure he dealt with this a lot, which doesn't make you sensitive automatically. He said, I'm going to let you guys, I'm going to leave and just give you some private time. And my mom started to cry, which I'm going to do right now, telling the story.
Oh, I understand. Yeah.
And she started to cry, and she said, well, and this is my mom's faith. She said, well, you know what? I'm going to miss driving. I love driving. This is going to be hard. She said, but other people have harder issues than I do, and God's going to help me get through it. So we leave the doctor. I drop her off at home. I come back to my town, and all I can say is this had to have been a God thing, because I thought to myself, how in the world, if she can't drive, how in the world am I going to help her do her life and do my life with it, which is burgeoning at the seams as it is right now?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And where the resentment came in is that my brother at the time was working out of state. He did construction supervising. He was working out of state for months at a time. My sister lived in northern Wisconsin, which, once you hit November, you just don't plan on driving anywhere because the roads are so bad.
Yeah.
And they don't plow where she is because she's out in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, that means it's left to me.
Yeah.
And the first thought that wanted to creep in was resentment. Why am I stuck with this? But I'm like, God, I think I must have just asked him that question. And he just flipped a switch, and by his grace, I understood at some level I was going to be the one that was going to get the blessing by being the one, the point person for caring for mom. And so keeping an eye on that, like I said, especially with siblings who may participate in caring, they may not want to. They may not think, and there can be disagreements too between siblings and other family members and whatnot. So I think one of the biggest insights that I learned was you have to ask. You have to ask, but you also for help from people.
Yeah.
And it may not be the people you automatically think of. Okay, so let's say, so my brother and sister just weren't really available. My sister was happy to call mom and talk to her on the phone to keep her company. That was great. But I needed to look at who else could I ask? Well, I love this. So when mom lost her driving privileges, and I thought, how am I gonna do this? I lived an hour and 15 minutes away by car.
Okay.
And I called our home church. The church secretary, first of all, she knew who I was. She knew who my mom was. I told her the situation, and the secretary said, no worries. I know exactly who I'm going to call. You handled. Check. What she did is she found somebody in the congregation who knew my mom, and she set up a driving schedule and contacted
Okay.
people to get her to all. She had cardiac rehab 3 days a week. She done. I made one phone call. It
Okay.
was like not more than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I called her church. So being in tune with what your parents' network is, it may be a church, it may be neighbors, it may be their good friends, it may be a coffee clutch, it might be, a team that they serve with at church or whatever. Uh, that saved me a whole lot of time.
Hmm.
And then another more practical thing is I thought, okay, groceries. At that time, this was pre-COVID, I had known about Peapod, which was a grocery delivery service. It's no longer, sadly, it's not in business anymore. So I contacted Peapod, and when I first told my mom, I had the screen called up with the groceries.
Hmm.
I had mom on the phone, and at first she thought that was really weird. I said, no, 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 let's just try it. Let's just try it. And so I picked her groceries. I gave her the total. She looked at her calendar. We decided a day for delivery based on her calendar. And then she'd send me a check to reimburse me for the credit card payment. Groceries, check, handled.
Okay.
So sometimes it's a service.
Yeah.
Sometimes we were on vacation and my mom had forgotten a medical appointment. And we were like 5 hours away. And I'm like, oh boy. So what I did is I called my cousin-in-law, who wasn't working at the time. Her kids were mostly grown. She lived in the next town. I called cousin Debbie and I said, hey, mom's got this appointment. I'm so sorry, but could you pick her up and take her to this appointment? And she's like, sure, not a problem.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
had to ask.
There's something else that's going on there that we sometimes overlook. In the case of your mom, for example, to say it kind of humorously, she may get tired of seeing you.
Well, true. Yeah,
And
no
so,
kidding.
and so now she has a way to keep maintaining that social connection with other folks and a new, as much as is possible,
Yes.
in touch with other family, in touch with their church group, things like that. So there's a positive side to asking others if they can help. It's not just because it relieves you of
Yes.
some burdens, but it's good for the person as well. Keeps them in touch.
That
Because
is exactly right.
yeah, one of the problems with having to receive care is your isolation, and
Yes.
so that's a good way to help overcome that. It helps give them a sense of value as well. So there's lots of positive things for
Oh,
that person.
huge, huge, huge positives. In fact, the team that was driving her hither and thither, if they'd have a conflict, they'd work it out themselves and they enjoy getting to know each
Yeah,
other better in
yeah,
helping Marianne.
yeah.
Yeah, it was a blessing for
You know,
sure.
I provided some help for somebody one time and they wanted to pay me for it. And it's like, no, 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 look, you need to give my heart a chance to grow. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and by the way, when uh, I had done something for him and I'm sorry, he had done something for me. And I said, I need to pay you for that. He goes, somebody
Ah,
told me one time, let my heart grow. So,
yes.
okay.
Yes,
And so we need to
exactly.
help people's heart to grow. So this is a good way to do it. Hey, what would you do differently? I mean, not necessarily mistakes, but sometimes a better way, a more efficient way, that sort of thing.
Yes. Yeah. And when I wrote the book and as I'm dealing with my in-laws and talking to all the other orphans, I thought to myself as I finished the book, I thought, you know, I got off really pretty easily. Um, but there's a lot behind that. But I think the one thing I would do differently would be eh, would be when I did plan visits to mom, I had an agenda. That's my strength and my weakness of being a planner, having an agenda, getting stuff done. And so it might be okay, I'm going to go visit mom. I know we have to go through her checking account. I know we have to go through these papers that she doesn't understand what they are, or she's going to need me to, I don't know, do the laundry or, make sure the kitchen is clean or whatever it was, or change a light bulb, right? Whatever it was. So
Okay.
I had this agenda in my head, and I really didn't realize it until after she was gone and talking with other people that what she really wanted was my time.
Yeah. Yeah.
She would have loved to just visit,
Mm-hmm.
just like we always did. What's going on in my world and
Yeah.
what's going on with David and your piano students. And she would have loved to just have some time to just visit. Or, we both loved coffee. We both loved going out. What would have been much better is, hey, mom, let's go to our favorite coffee shop up in Woodstock and just visit. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry that it was that Achilles heel of my own of having an agenda and getting stuff done
Mm-hmm.
that probably, she would never say it, but was probably a disappointment to her.
Okay. I can see that. I know you have to get some things done, obviously, but yeah, that again, that social, that interaction, that perhaps takes priority. I mean, that's
Yeah.
part of the reason we're being a caregiver. It's not just necessarily, well, I should say it's meeting that need also.
Yes, right. And if that can be a motivator to, call in some help. Like there's an organization called Home Helpers, and I really should know if that's nationwide or I, I can't remember if it's nationwide or not, but it's called Home Helpers. And for instance, they can come in and they can wash your loved one's hair, or they can give your dad a shave, or they can fix simple meals. They do anything and everything, all the way up
Yeah.
to cared nursing skill. And it might be one of those, like, let's say, the smaller percentage. So as a guy, you're left trying to care for mom and you're like, yeah, washing her hair is really awkward. I don't want to do that. That's just weird. You can find a service to do some of those things so that when you go see her, you have time to just visit or just to visit or take her out somewhere or whatever.
So you had challenges, but your mom had challenges also. So I'd kind of like to switch around a little bit and talk about some of the challenges that your mom had to overcome. And I think in my case, it would be asking for help because I've always been the guy in charge and I get things done and I'm afraid somebody's not going to do it my whatever. Uh,
Yes, yes. Yeah, and that can be, I was pretty surprised at how well, and I wasn't there all the time. So it appeared to me that her ability to receive help was pretty smooth. And I think it's probably because it was connected socially. And she was a super social person.
mhm.
But that is a really big challenge for a lot of people is to accept help. I'll share one more insight. I realized as she was just getting a little less stable walking or whatever, and she still lived in the two-story farmhouse, and it was important for her that she sleep upstairs and keep her bedroom upstairs. Somewhere in the sequence of things, she had fallen. She didn't injure herself, but she used her life alert button. That's another simple thing. If somebody can
Yeah.
accept to have a life alert button, she used it when she fell, and she had actually there were people from church that listened to the ham radio and listened to the calls. They were there waiting when I got down there at night to sit with her overnight. But anyway, there were family members who said they were all upset. And I think they were all upset about mom sleeping upstairs and going down those stairs and she's going to fall and blah, blah, blah. And again, I didn't think about this ahead of time. I'm not an expert, but I'm like, you know what? Her dignity of choice
Yeah.
is really important.
Mm-hmm.
And she figured out a way to go up and down those stairs very slowly, very carefully. It's what she wanted. And became an advocate for her to say to the family members, look, you know what? Mom has every right to choose where she wants to sleep in her own house, for heaven's sake. I'm not going to tell her she can't go up and down those stairs. And part of that was I knew, because I'm family, the second floor of that farmhouse was particularly special to her because that's where she and my dad started their married life when they lived up there and her mother-in-law lived downstairs. And they made their first home together upstairs in that farmhouse. It's
Okay.
why it was important to her.
Yeah.
But it was being an advocate and saying, you know what? Let's let her have some dignity of choice. So anyway, I digress. Let's see. It was,
Well,
yeah.
no,
So
that's a part of it. Helping that person, dignity is just such a huge part of it. As long
it
as she
is.
was, as long as she was physically capable. Now, obviously, if she
Right.
was wheelchair bound or something, that's a whole
That's
difference.
different.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think the biggest thing that gave my mom hope, so I'll share this story about the end of her life and the challenge. She, gosh, for decades, she had a fear, and as she watched friends and older friends have to go to a facility to be in a nursing home.
Mm-hmm.
That was her nightmare. It was her dreaded nightmare. And our whole family knew it well. She wanted to die in that farmhouse, and she was 2 weeks off from being able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was I took her to a doctor's appointment. She had fluid on her lungs, and she'd been taking a diuretic medication, and it wasn't working well enough. And the physician's assistant explained it, and she said, we could either increase that dose or we could put you in the hospital so that they can do that, more readily and thoroughly. And mom looked at me and said, well, what do you think? And I thought about all the circumstances. I'm like, Mom, I think it's going to be better if you go in the hospital so that they can do this right and keep an eye on you and make sure that we take care of this. She was in the hospital, I don't know, 5 days maybe, right before Thanksgiving. And so all sorts of people were visiting her. And I think I heard it too. I can't remember now because people would call me and report to me of, hey, I visited mom. This is how she was doing, or this is what she said. And she kept saying, she said to my brother, make sure that you take care of the farm. Then she started saying, I just want to go home. Now, she loved the farm, as you've already picked up from this interview. She didn't mean the farm. She meant going home to heaven. I just want to go home.
Yeah. Wow.
She was tired.
Mm-hmm.
And even that was a grace of God for me of like, oh, I see where this is going. She didn't have a debilitating disease. She didn't have a fatal disease. And she just wanted to go home. But that's because her hope was so firmly rooted in Christ, and heaven was so real to her.
Yeah.
That living was getting to be hard,
Right.
and this hospitalization kind of pushed her right up to the edge. And so that was her hope. It really was her faith all along, her lifelong. One faith in a long direction for, she died at 87. And
Okay.
yeah, it really, that's where she got her hope. It was, and she stayed involved in the church, so she had people visiting and praying with her, and the pastors would come, and she
Yeah.
was never alone.
Yeah. So her faith was a big part of helping her get through the challenges. She's obviously aware as
Yep.
life is coming to an end, those kinds of things. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Your book, where you chronicle her memoirs and talk about all of this, is going to be a valuable resource to a lot of people. So I'm going to be putting information about your book, your podcast, your website, all of that on the show notes. But how can someone contact you if they would like more information?
Terrific. Yeah. If you go to the website, www.becominganorphan.com, you'll find everything and anything you need. In fact, that website can also be a great resource. I have some radio spots, just like 2-minute encouragements. I have, what else is on there? All sorts of a couple interviews with people about caregiving, and you can get, oh yeah, the other information is I do a support group for caregivers that's just short, simple, small, via Zoom. Uh, you can sign up for that as well. It's just a 6-week, and you can come in at any point in your caregiving journey. I've had people whose parents are gone already, but they have some guilt. I have people who are right in the middle of it, maybe with even both parents, and different situations with each one. And what's a beautiful thing is that you can just vent. And one of the reasons it's called, the Zoom support group is called Two Are Better Than One,
Okay. Yes.
which of course comes from Ecclesiastes. Two are better than one, because if you just need to vent about some circumstances going on in your caregiving journey, what I did discover is it's not really helpful to vent with family members. Because it just gets everyone stirred up
Yeah. Yeah.
and offering
Yeah.
more opinions. And what's also a beautiful thing is there was a woman in the group who, she just still had some guilt about the last days that she had with her mom. And she expressed that. And another woman in the group gave her a completely different perspective on how to look at that moment. And she was set free from this regret.
Okay. Wow. That's great. Two are better than one. That's absolutely true, because none of us are alone.
That's right. That's
So,
right. So yeah, becominganorphan.com.
yeah. Okay. Where did droppedpencil.com, where did that come from?
Where did that come from? Well, yes, because that's my parent company with my husband. And
Okay.
so we're both musicians. I didn't even cover that. I'm a classically trained pianist with a master's degree in performance, and I
Okay.
teach piano as my day job. And my husband is a singer. So it comes from, he grew up in a traditionally shaped church with a wood floor, and that it slopes down from the back to the front. Well, my husband's also into drawing. He used to cartoon. He's very visual. He does videography and photos and
Okay.
whatnot. And he and his younger brother, invariably, in the old time churches, they'd have the little like golf pencils, the
Uh-huh.
little,
Sure.
well, invariably at the quietest moment of church service, they'd drop that pencil on the floor and it'd go ding, 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 ding down the aisle.
Oh
And
boy.
then myself as a piano teacher, what do I always have in my hand? I always have a pencil, because I'm correcting, or we're making notes, or even in my own scores, I'm making notes. So that's where dropped pencil
Okay.
comes from.
All right. Well, I'm going to include all those contact points, because I think it's important for folks to be able to get with you and learn more.
Thank you.
Maybe as a way they can share their experiences as well. Okay. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
I think one of the biggest, when I mentioned the only regret was not taking more time to just listen and visit with mom. The other thing is, as you are trying to ascertain what your mom and dad really need, is this seems so basic, but asking asking questions and then really listening. And a
Hmm.
lot of times it takes listening beyond the words. You have to listen to their heart.
Yeah.
A tiny illustration of this, my mother-in-law this past Easter went to the hospital having a heart attack Easter morning. Now, thank God they were able to put stents in and it was less invasive and they got to her just in time. But when we went to visit with her, I don't know, we must not have visited more than half an hour. I probably heard 4 times her say, oh my gosh, but now I have all these medications to take. I was taking all these medications before and I don't know about how I'm going to manage taking all these medications. I heard it like 4 times and I thought, I think she's anxious about keeping track of the medications.
Or she might be
So
asking help. Somebody help me figure this out. Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
that's what I think I could hear beyond the words. And a good friend of mine who's a retired nurse said, hey, they have these pill distributors that are automatic battery run. You
Yeah.
just load them up for 2 weeks. I didn't know that. So we bought her one. We loaded it up. She learned how to load it herself. Handled.
Wow. Hey, I used to teach classes on communication, and I came up with this acronym that's called, we know listening is an active process. And so I
Yes.
came up with this acronym, the ACT, ACT, of listening. A stands for attend. That means to be there physically and mentally. C stands for consider, and that's what you were just describing. What did they say? And now you're looking for, is there a message? Excuse me, is there a message behind what I'm hearing? And then you can talk to it. So it's
Yes.
ACT. That's part of
I
my
like that.
workshop. Yeah. So
That's cool.
you just described it in real life exactly, the application of it. So yeah,
Mm.
communication
And
skills are just incredibly important as a caregiver.
yes, yes. And one of the things I read in my research before I wrote the book was when you do have to have those tough conversations or there's a disagreement among the family members and everybody's emotions get riled up,
Yeah.
that's not the time to do that. Just stand down, let everybody calm down, and then approach the topic, whether it's the next day by phone or if you can, or even go take a walk. We're going to go take a walk. We're going to go get ice cream, and then we're going to come back, and then we're going to talk about this when we're all calmed down.
Okay. We could go on for a long time on this because it's such a critical area as we age, as our family
Yes.
members age, as our friends age,
Yep.
all of that. Okay. I
Yeah,
haven't,
as
uh-huh.
you started, the statistic now is we have 25% of the population is doing caregiving at some level, like you said, that's just family
Yeah,
or at home,
yeah,
or
yeah,
25%. And it is largely women, but not only.
yeah.
So
And that's what we know of. I mean, there's so many, that's probably a very conservative number.
hmm
And so we can find ourselves, and the better prepared we are, obviously the
yes,
better we take care of ourselves as well as take care of others. Okay.
yes,
Ingrid, thank you. I thank you for the love you had for your family, the care for them.
mm,
And I appreciate now that you've turned around and are helping other caregivers learn and better perform in their role. Okay.
yes. You're welcome. It's great to chat with you, get to know you, and be on the our journey for hope.
Well, thank you for joining me as together we journey to hope. I trust in some small way that we have encouraged you to discover, sustain, or regain hope through this effort. I invite you to contact me if you have questions or comments, or if you wish to share with me something you've experienced in your journey to hope. My email is info@ourjourneytohope.com. That's info@ourjourneytohope.com. And please share this podcast with someone whose hope is being challenged. I look forward to sharing more with you soon. Again, I'm Dr. Dave Laton, and thank you for listening. And until our next episode, remember, we give all glory to God our Father.